If you're a wedding photographer and would like to get all of my email templates completely for free, there's a link in the description below. Oh, we're here. This isn't a voiceover this time. Today, we are talking about my first wedding experience with the Canon R6. Oh, it's not that song. My bad. Yeah, check out this weird composition. Sorry about the weird composition. Disappointed with the weird composition. Yeah, what was I thinking? It looked great on the LCD, but now it looks terrible. I even tried to crop with bars, but this frame is not repairable. That was a nice song, wasn't it? Welcome to today's video. We're in a different spot. Usually we're at the studio, but we're going away tomorrow, so I figured I would get this video at least recorded so I can post it tomorrow. Gonna make it a little more Canon in here. Got this red light. That did a lot less than I expected it to do. Yesterday, I photographed my first wedding with the Canon R6, and I did not intend to photograph that wedding with the Canon R6. I brought the Nikon Z5 and I brought my D850, and I arrived, and within, I would say maybe 20 minutes, I was like, I'll try it out for a few shots. And I was very impressed. And then I kept using it throughout the rest of the day. And then I was like, I won't photograph the ceremony with it. I'll go back to my trusty Nikon equipment. And then I just kept shooting with it, and it was a lot of fun. I'm gonna walk you through my learning experience with the Canon R6 and how much I just truly enjoyed taking images with it. My kit was, I only have, I guess, two lenses. I have this 35 that's on here. I've used this 35 with the Canon RP and the Canon R, which I've also enjoyed. But I've always been a little bit turned off from the fact that there's only one card slot. And while, like, best use case, you load everything off by USB-C, if you're gonna have a card failure, it's likely going to be popping the card out, putting it in a card reader. Something could go wrong there statistically. So load it out by USB-C if you only have one card. That also might be good practice if you're a hybrid shooter. So if you're doing both photography and video coverage. One of the downsides, I guess, to speak immediately to all the cons of the camera after setting it up so well, is that the video files will only write to one single card. So you're still shooting one card for video, but photos will go to both. I'd like to see a firmware update if possible. That would make my life so much happier. The other thing maybe to mention off the top that's been a bit of a controversial point, not as controversial as the Sony a7S III that has 12 megapixels, but this camera has 20 megapixels, which I believe to be perfect for weddings. I think 20 to 24 is kind of perfect. I think my D5 was around 20 point something. And I don't need 45 megapixels. I don't need a Canon R5 for the wedding day. I don't even need the full resolution of my Nikon D850, which is my usual main wedding day camera. I shoot that on medium raw, which means I'm shooting, I think, 24 megapixels. So I'm very happy with 20 megapixels. Another thing I'm very happy about is just having silent shooting. And even if you are on the mechanical shutter, it's a very quiet shutter, so it's nice to know, specifically when you're doing photos with couples, they almost want to hear that button press. If you're shooting completely silent during the photo session with the two of them, it's going to be a little bit weird. So you want a little bit of noise, but I think that it's kind of the perfect amount of noise coming out of that. And wedding day, it's nice that it just kind of blends into the background. And if you want to turn on that electronic shutter and you don't want any noise to happen, you can do that. Depending on where you're at, I think getting ready coverage, it's like when everybody's quiet. If there's music, I feel like it hides your shutter, but if the music is low or you're in a room that there's not a lot of noise happening and you come in there and you're blasting frames away, it's nicer to be on a silent shutter, I think, in that situation. The other thing I found myself using a lot that I did not think that I was going to be using is from the EVF to the actual LCD transition. I shot off the LCD a lot more than I would have expected. I've spoken to this in the past that I actually, for wedding days in the past, have just enjoyed the regular, not a full articulating screen, just the up-down one, simply because it's just kind of an extra motion to make a full articulating screen, and then you have a screen sticking out the side, and if you put it up to your face, it's a little bit weird. So in the past, I've preferred it, but I definitely saw how much it can help me out, specifically in weird elevation environments. So doing family photos, I was significantly higher. It was raining, so we kind of had to hide everybody in a certain area. And I was standing over here, and rather than like crouching down and shooting family formals like I'm some sort of weirdo on a hill, and it's not a thing that I would have anticipated if like I read the specs of this, I'm not like, oh, that's really gonna help me out. But on the wedding day, it was actually really, really helpful. Another experiential part of the camera that I really do love a lot is when you actually are putting your face into the EVF, the switch is very seamless, and it almost, by the time your face gets close enough, I feel like it switches, and as you get closer, it looks like you're looking through an optical viewfinder. I know that you can adjust sensitivities, but I feel like the R6 just really has that transition really nice. It looks like you're just going into an optical viewfinder that displays life better than an optical viewfinder. If you've never shot an EVF, by the end of the night in dancing and when everything gets dark in your camera and you look around the world, you're like, that's what it actually looks like out here. It looks so much better through my camera. To speak to one of the things that I absolutely love about this camera, it is the autofocus. The autofocus is absolutely incredible. I shot the 85 1.2 at pretty much 1.2 for most of the day. And if I had to take count, I'm gonna guess of the, I shot 4,500 shots because it shoots really fast and it's really fun. So I very much overshot that like 6-hour day. But I would suspect of those 4,500 shots that I took, I'm gonna say 4,480 are in focus on the subject that I actually wanted focus on. It seems like when I look through and I see a scene, it just knows where to focus on within that scene. So shout out to whoever programmed or the team that is in charge of just the decision making, because it's really phenomenal, and it was something that really did exceed all of my expectations. And that's one of the reasons why when I started shooting with it, I just never put it down again, because it was so interesting to see myself working so well. In the past, I've always shot single point autofocus, which means I'm moving the point around and picking exactly what I want to be in focus. This is the first time that I let the camera just do what it wanted, and it really did a phenomenal job. And it is so scary after 15 years to drop from single autofocus point to letting the camera make those decisions. I did not want to be put in a position where I quickly had to override something, especially during the ceremony when Haley and her dad were walking towards us. That really did give me anxiety, and it worked out so much better than I ever could have imagined. So shout out to the Canon team programming that, because I really am just completely blown. I feel like it's dark enough now that I can turn my light on. The EVF really does, it just feels like Halloween, doesn't it? I'll take it down. The EVF doesn't feel like it's digital. It has a sense of reality, and it feels like you're in the environment. It doesn't look like you're looking at a screen by any means, so I think that's really cool. And then also the other thing that just blew me away was the low light sensitivity of the sensor. And at ISO, I'll put it on the screen whatever this was shot at, but this was a test image. I was like, how high can this go? And on the back of the camera, it was still giving me great looking images with very little noise at ISOs that are completely unreasonable. Just a general wedding note, I would suspect that I would never really have to shoot over 10,000 ISO. If I'm shooting in a 10,000 ISO environment, I'm shooting somewhere that's completely dark and that people can't see each other, especially with a 1.2 prime. But it's nice to know that there is really not a whole lot of limit to how far you can push it. And especially if you're getting that exposure right in camera, the files look really great. So low light, just absolutely phenomenal, which is very important to wedding photographers and very important if you're shooting lenses that aren't the super expensive, crazy, heavy 1.2 85. To speak to a few of the negatives, I guess, the biggest one being price, that it's quite expensive to purchase a camera, and two, to get into the Canon R ecosystem entirely. It is really expensive. All of the lenses, okay, so maybe I'll preface this with all of the current lenses, for the most part, are quite expensive, but there are the f2 versions and f1.8 versions on the way as well. So if you don't want to carry around, I don't even know what the combined weight of the R6 and that 85 1.2 are, but it's quite heavy to have out there on a full wedding day. So I might suggest, if that's not a lens you're going to be using all the time, for me, my 85 is like the lens that I just use all the time. So I'm happy to have that, and I'm happy to carry the weight for it. But if it's not something you're going to use all the time, look at the new, the Canon 85 f2 that's coming out with image stabilization in the lens as well as in the body. Like, that's going to be It's gonna be a really nice combo. So I would suspect with that combination of ingredients, you'll be able to create some good things and your wrists won't be sore at the end of the day. Another note that I'm sure you're well aware of is the overheating aspect of things. I didn't experience any overheating when I was out there. I don't shoot 4K video, so I'm potentially maybe never going to have any real issues with it. I shoot HD video, but I do photography and video hybrid coverage at the same time. So that does make me a little bit nervous if that's going to be a problem, but hopefully that's a firmware solution at some point. I know there's already some hacks and stuff out there for it, but I did not experience it on a full wedding day shooting a heck of a lot of frames. So that is my experience, and I'll update the comments or I'll update the description if I do discover that. But as of right now, I don't see it being a problem for photography and HD video coverage. So yeah, I am super happy with the camera. I love that it's such an organic EVF experience. It does not feel digital. The images are all, like the autofocus really does just make the right selects. And to maybe even speak to the image quality, and I'm sure it's a combination of the R6 with the really expensive super heavy lens, but the way the images come together, it feels so much better than any Canon camera that I've ever shot before. It feels, I guess the easiest comparison that I can make is when you're photographing with a Leica camera, like a Q2 or a Q or really anything. It seems that Leica, their programmers know how to have the camera makes the correct decisions for white balances, for exposures, that you can really just kind of set that camera to aperture priority and you can just go out and you don't have to worry about too much. You don't set your ISO, you let that run auto. You can let the camera make a lot of decisions and the images come back phenomenal. I'm gonna say it's quite the same for the R6, that I let this camera do a lot more of the decision making than I would normally do. And the way that the files all look straight out of camera, the JPEGs, I'm just super happy with it. So phenomenal camera. If you have the money for it, it's definitely a great purchase. And there is already a great lineup of lenses. What I am personally waiting for are the wider end of the primes that I need. Either, I would say I would really like to have a 24 1.4 or even a 24 f2 to natively fit on. I know I can go through the adapter, but I would rather just have native glass, and if I could run that on two camera bodies, a 24 on one and the 85 1.2 on the other, I feel like that would be an absolute world-class solution for wedding photographers anywhere. So those are my thoughts. I will bring you more as I continue to use the camera, but as somebody that has photographed a lot of cameras, I think that this is really I'm gonna maybe even call it the wedding photography camera of the year. I know the year's not done yet, but as of right now, I would say that that's where it sits. That if you have the budget, if you're a working pro and you have a lot of weddings coming in and you do need the gear, that this is the solution for you, especially if you've made it this far into a video about the R6. You're probably already at least 3/4 serious about it. So yeah, I'm super happy with it as a dude that literally has a Nikon show, and now I'm shooting this and I'm having a great time. So thanks for being here. Thanks for not making fun of my red light. I really thought that would do a lot better, but it's just like bad Halloween. And if you want to get my wedding photography email templates, it's really bright. There's a link in the description below to go and get those. And you can use them. You can modify them to be your own voice. Don't just send out my complete, you can if you want, but I probably recommend at least adding a few sentences that make things personal. Thanks for being here. See you again next time. I'm gonna do a proper full review on the R6. So if you are not subscribed to this channel, subscribe and then also put the bell on. I'm going to be doing kind of dual Z5 as well as R6 videos coming out kind of over the week. As I create them, I will put them out into the world for you. So yeah, super happy with this camera and I think that you will be too. I'm kind of happy with this light. The light could have gone better. I had real big hopes for the light. See you next time. Yeah, check out this weird composition. Sorry about the weird composition.